Hello and welcome to Twerk, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing people, the fantastic jobs they do, and the paths that led them to where they are today. I am here with Carline. Hi, Carline.
Hi.
Could you tell the listener what it is you do for a living?
Yeah. So I am currently an operations director at Getty Images.
Amazing. So, okay. You see, even then, I've got so many questions, but I've got to ignore my questions. It's not about me. And instead, we're going to chat back and we're going to talk about little Carline. So when you were younger, little person, what were you like? What were you into?
What was I like? So little Carline, I grew up on a council estate on the outskirts of Cambridge. I had a sister and a mum and a dad. Both of my parents had, kind of working class jobs, very strong work ethic.
Yeah.
But it was a huge part of their lives because they needed the money, basically. And that's kind of,
it's that sort of typical, live to work to live scenario, isn't it?
Exactly. And so as a result of that, they were both kind of out of the house or in the house a lot working. And so I had a lot of freedom.
Okay.
And
you're the younger of the two?
No, I'm actually the older.
Oh, you're the big sister.
Yeah, I'm the big sister. And because we grew up in a kind of council estate setting, we were sort of surrounded by families and kids, and there were no phones back in those days. I guess
you just
it
went
was
and called
the
for your mates.
80s. We were kind of on big gangs of bikes. Brilliant. Huge kind of diversity as well in this kind of council estate outside of Cambridge. Loads of different kinds of personalities, amazing characters that we experienced on that estate. Lots of freedom, running around in fields, hiding in haystacks, misbehaving.
Brilliant.
And running around in big groups of kids. Loads of boys. I mostly hung out with boys, fighting with boys. It was a really, I guess it was really formative. Again, I didn't really know at the time. One of the things that I always felt is that I wasn't like anybody else.
Okay.
A kind of sense that...
So even though you're in your groups, you always felt a little bit...
Yeah, and that is a sense that I carried from being a child. And I also knew that I was a great negotiator and a chameleon, so I fitted in.
You could adapt and mould, and I guess what was school life like then? What were you into at school?
Yeah, so I have since looked back and realised that school was my safe place. And school, I've always been quick-witted, and I've always, my brain, I kind of talk about that in as a third person. It feels like a very powerful part of me.
Yeah.
And so, as I've got older, I've learnt to hack it and control it. But when I was younger, I loved school. I was at the front of the class. I really wanted kind of approval from the teachers.
You like to do
that was my happy place.
Wow.
But which is really interesting because I now have two children that are not interested in school at all.
But they've lived a different life, haven't they?
It's interesting. But I think, when I've looked back on it, school was a place that I was safe and happy.
Yeah.
And it was very different from being at home.
Yes.
And because I was traditionally academic, I think, then you get approval, don't you? You just get approval, you got an A, and oh, well done, Carline.
Teachers
I read a lot, and I think I read a lot from a really young age, and I walked up to the library on my own, and I was one of those kind of kids that would be. I loved learning. Yeah.
So did well at school then. Favourite subjects?
I was always really good at English.
Yeah.
So writing was a big thing for me. Maths I found really tricky.
Yeah.
But I was good at expressing my ideas, and I could understand concepts really quickly. And so I did really well at school. English was a predominant kind of place that reading, writing.
Yeah.
Was a place that I sort of excelled.
And then college?
So then I got really good GCSEs, and this was my first big lesson. So I got good enough grades to go to the best A-level sort of state A-level college.
Sort of grammar college, for whatever.
Well, it wasn't a grammar, but there was, in Cambridge, there were 3 at the time. And so there was Hills Road, which was where all the smart, posh kids went.
Yeah.
And then there was Long Road, which was the kind of middle.
Ooh, okay.
And then there was CRC, which everybody called Cambridge Reject College. And so I didn't have the kind of relationship that I now hope that my daughter has with me. There wasn't much guidance.
No.
It was the time.
So,
right?
yes.
And so I do remember just giving myself a talking to at age whatever I was and going, look, you've got potential, so why don't you go to the college that you can get into?
Yeah, okay.
And so that was kind of my first experience, really, in a way, of not being able to think about things in a fully rounded way.
Right.
Because what I didn't think was, who are you going to be hanging out with? How are you going to feel when you go there? Because all of my friends went somewhere else.
Yes.
But I sort of hyper-focused on making something of myself.
Yeah.
And if you can get in there, get in there. And I didn't do like a full 360 of it. And I went there and I absolutely hated it. I tanked.
Oh.
I was a small fish in a big pond.
Completely starting
I
new.
thought I was really smart, and then I went there and it was like, and I was really, that was the first time when I felt really vulnerable and totally out of my depth, and I had no life experience of being in that situation. And so
and did you you felt quite alone, did you? Because all your mates were somewhere else.
And when you don't really, I think human beings, right, they're in a difficult situation and they go, this is really hard, and then they make it like, I'm wrong, I'm not enough.
Yeah.
They don't think, I'm the right person in the wrong, I'm good at what I do, but I picked the wrong A-levels, or I thrive in this environment.
So you weren't having
but
that counsel at home either, were you?
No.
So you were just navigating this on your own, going,
so I just quit.
I've
ran
made
out
the
of
wrong
there.
decision, this isn't right. Wow, okay, after how long?
Oh, weeks.
Right.
Yeah, and actually when I look back, the way I've reframed that is like, when things aren't right, I am prepared to make a difficult decision.
Yeah.
And I did, and I just got the hell out of there quickly. And actually, to my mum's sort of, real credit, is that I've been saying there wasn't a huge amount of guidance, but then there's just unwavering support. You want to quit. You want to go to the best place, the best college, go to it.
Yeah.
We'll support you whichever decision you make.
Okay.
And so she was like, well, fine, just don't do that then. And so I decided to have the rest of that year out.
Yeah.
And so I worked at Grantchester, which is outside of Cambridge, at a place called the Orchard, which is actually quite a famous tea rooms. It's got like historical significance. And I worked in the tea room basically, but it had this amazing orchard and these grounds, and it had loads of American tourists there. And I worked full time, passed my driving test, bought a classic car, had a great time, and they were trying to keep me, and I got promoted to be a supervisor there, and they were like, stay, you can manage the tea rooms.
And by this point you're what, sort of 17?
I was 17,
18?
Which is interesting when I look back.
Yeah.
And then I went back to do A-levels, and I went to Cambridge Reject College.
Okay.
Which I should stop calling it, because it's, it's a good kind of all-rounder college, but it had, beauty therapy and stuff like that. So it had, much like the colleges in Norwich here, has got negative connotations of taking anybody in. Lots of variety in terms of, what courses they offer.
Yeah. So what are you now? Are you is this 2 years later? Or is this
I'm
1
18.
year later? Yeah.
And then I did English, media studies and psychology at A-level.
Wow. With a view to...
I had absolutely no idea.
You just knew they interested you?
Yeah. And I've always only ever done what interested me. I didn't have the skills. It's really different to how it is now. I just kept thinking, I'll be an English teacher then. If anyone asked me, I might just say I'll be an English teacher. I had no idea.
So, we're going through college. We finished college. You're working, colleging. Then what do you do?
Yeah, so I did really well. I got 2 A's and a C at A-level. I worked really hard, but I also partied really hard.
And worked really hard.
And I had a great time.
Yeah.
And so it was never either or.
Yeah.
One never encroached on the other, but they butted up against each other a lot. I like to tell my kids and whoever will listen that I flew back from Ibiza to collect my A-level results.
Brilliant.
On that same, I'd been partying there for a week.
And you
came
hadn't
back.
slept.
Of course I hadn't slept for days. And then I came back, got my A-level results. Oh, I've done really well. Okay, what next? So it wasn't, and I kind of share these kind of personal stories because it's not like I did well, but then also I was also, having a really good time. I wasn't studious. I did study, but then I also had a really good time too. So it's, breaking that stereotype in a way.
I love that.
But yeah, so I did really well at A-levels, and then I decided to go to Sheffield University.
Okay.
Again, I think that I decided to go there because someone mentioned that it was good, and I just thought, why not? Yeah, exactly.
It's always been quite a good uni party place.
And it wasn't, when I look back, it wasn't a very well-rounded, thought-through process. I was only 18, 19, but it was like, oh, well, they've got a good uni course, why not? I said to my mum, I'm going to go to Sheffield University, and she was like, great. And so, and I went there.
To do?
English.
Ah.
So I enjoyed English as a kid, did well at GCSE, picked it for A-level. It was not a conscious thing. It was just like, oh, I can do that. I would get that degree. I'm just going to do that.
I'm good at it. Yeah. And brilliant.
Again, it's like
it interested you, didn't it? You were really interested by it. So,
well, you say that, but I mean, I just went through my uni course. I was interested in it, but
you weren't passionate about it necessarily.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, I could just do it. I could technically do it. And I worked all the way through. Yeah. This is a kind of theme. So in my first year, I worked behind the bar and waitressing at a place called the Forum, which is still there today. And that was a pre-bar for a massive super club that was in Sheffield, which is Gatecrasher. Yeah. So there's a running theme here. So that was a great place to work because I get to work all evening and then got into Gatecrasher for free. Yeah. And I got to be part of kind of like the club culture, but then I was also earning money and getting to know the bouncers and could walk into the front of the queue. And that was, again, I like to think of it now, not at the time, because I just did whatever was in front of me, but it's kind of like a work-life integration. Yeah. Like I'm interested in partying, dance music, clubbing, but I need to earn money, and I kind of found this place that did the two. Yeah, brilliant. Whereas my friends were in the Forum, getting drunk, paying to get drunk, and then going to the club. I was working all evening, getting in for free, and having a great, having a great time. So that was really good. Every summer I came back and worked. I came back to Cambridge. Yeah. My boyfriend at the time lived in Cambridge, so I would come back every summer. Yeah. Never a question whether I would work or not work. I worked throughout uni. Every summer I came back and worked. I had some
was it the
mad
same place or
jobs. No.
Oh, right.
No. So one summer I worked in the Sainsbury's staff canteen.
Right.
And I just did a few hours on a Sunday, starting at like 7 a.m. And it was basically to cook the food for people that did, that did the night shift and finished.
Oh, okay.
And those that came in early and needed to be fed before they worked their shift. Yeah. And so I would go out partying all night in London, and then my boyfriend would drop me off in the car park with my hairnet and my sort of, Sainsbury's uniform, which I would get changed into, like get the clubbing gear off and get the Sainsbury's uniform on, and then I would, prep jacket potatoes, grate loads of cheese, make coleslaw, get all the food ready. So one temp job, this is quite a mad one, I worked at Anglian Water in the lab, and basically my job was to take crates of drinking water samples from all around mostly around East Anglia in the Midlands, not the Midlands,
Right.
the kind of near where you live,
What,
right?
they were getting shipped in?
No, there were samples from drinking water samples from the drinking water
Who was
reservoirs.
getting those?
That's somebody's job to go and collect
Yeah, I was gonna
water
say.
samples. At Anglian Water, they obviously have to test what's happening,
Yes,
to keep
yeah.
the drinking water safe for everyone that they're
Yeah.
delivering it to. And so, and this was mad because I don't think I really liked science that much at school. So I would have to take these bottles of water, and I was working in a science lab, which was just mad to me because of, what I was doing
And
outside
you
of
were
work.
like 19, 20?
Yeah, early 20s.
Yeah.
I got paid really well for that, and I had to wear a lab coat and a hairnet, and I had like a Bunsen burner and like measuring equipment, and I basically had to boil down the tap water to
One at a time?
Yeah, each sample, and then kind of be quite fastidious about recording the samples and the labels.
Oh my God.
And when you boil down tap water, you get left with the mineral residue.
Yeah.
And then I had to weigh it. And that was my job.
Wow. So I was, as you were saying that, I was thinking, well, two things. I was thinking, God, really, what was the criteria for that job? Because it sounds really quite scientific, but then actually, that's just a process, isn't it? It probably isn't that scientific. So as long as you were bright and you weren't going to muck it up.
Yeah. And I guess I think
you
in
could
those
follow
days, like if you were at uni, I think that just opened the door. And it was like, I'm at uni, I'm looking for a summer job. And it was...
Go and measure some water.
Go and measure some
dry
water.
water.
Yeah, exactly. So
Brilliant. She says having a sip of
yeah, exactly. I need to drink the water too. So, the other funny thing about that is that Anglian Water in Cambridge is right next to the sewage works. So the whole place smelt like shit, literally.
Wow.
And you couldn't eat in the science lab, and I would take my packed lunch. There was nowhere to get lunch. And so every day I would sit on like a picnic bench outside with the smell of shit, eating my packed lunch. And something that you wouldn't know, which is a detail, that when there's sewage works, the insects are very chubby.
Right.
Because they've got all of their nice
fat insects.
stuff that they've been eating of the
Stop
sewage
it.
works.
Stop it.
So there were giant flies and giant spiders. And so I have a really strong memory of one vision of myself kind of dressed like a scientist, which was really weird in the mirror, and then also huge juicy spiders everywhere in this lab, which I'm not a fan of spiders, and so those were that was kind of what that summer was. One random summer next to the
with
sewage
Sainsbury's
works.
on a Sunday.
With Sainsbury's on a Sunday, and
Brilliant.
I earned really great money from that, and then just had a nice time. And then I think I also worked at the Fez Club, maybe in the evenings too.
Wow.
And so I had a
you
job.
really made the most of... Brilliant. Okay, so finish uni then.
Yeah, finished uni. I had another job as well while I was at uni, which was where I lived opposite my house. There was a cafe that had just opened, and they were running their own business, so they were entrepreneurial. So I started doing shifts, and then it morphed. And this is a theme. It's like when you show up, willing to get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
I'm interested in life.
Yeah,
I'm interested in
and people,
anything. Do I really care that much about tea? No, but I meet you. You love tea. And
That's
I'm
really
interested in your passion. So I'm going to have a bit of that.
Yeah.
And they basically, in the end, I started getting paid for getting up, opening the shop, turning on all the machines, putting the cakes out, and then going back to bed. Because I lived there. They had to drive in, and as it morphed, I was like, saw this opportunity. This is how I remember it anyway. And it was like, well, they trusted me. Yeah. I showed that I could do what,
that would have really helped them out, though.
It really helped them out, and it really helped me out, because I basically just had to set my alarm, I think about it as I was walking across in my pyjamas. I probably didn't, probably got ready. Yeah. But then I got to have, like, a cappuccino, a really nice coffee. You had to test for the first one of the day and be there. I didn't have to deal with any customers, and they actually paid other people to come in and do the shifts.
Brilliant.
So every single day I was earning money by, using this opportunity. So, so that was great, and that lasted as long as it needed to. And then I finished uni.
Yeah.
met some great people. Didn't study quite hard enough, but I got a 2-1 at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then the shit really hits the fan, because you're like, oh God,
what am I going to do?
I have to do something now. I have to really think, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And so, I went back to Cambridge. I think I started working at the Fez Club in the evenings.
Yeah.
So again, like, work-life integration, loving that, great people, met friends there then, which I'm still friends with now, 20-something years later.
Brilliant.
It was part of my social life. But then I applied for a job at a startup. And this is really where my next chapter begins.
Wow,
like, this was... So it was my sort of, I call it my first proper job.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job. It was on the Cambridge Science Park, and it was a technology startup.
Yeah.
So had I even worked in an office? Never really worked in an office apart from
you've very much worked in hospitality or manufacturing.
Exactly, yeah. And then I was just in this office environment.
For context, are you like 24?
I'm going to say 23.
23, 24. Okay.
They made the motherboard, the sort of technical piece that gets manufactured into a phone that makes a phone be Bluetooth enabled, basically. So Bluetooth technology was very, very new. Obviously, it's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
But back then, 20 years ago, that was their job, and it was really entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
They needed a sales coordinator to work with these companies, mostly in Japan, where they'd created this, actually it's just popped into my head what it was called. I hadn't thought about this for a long time, but they created this product which enabled you to test and design Bluetooth into your, whatever you're doing, making phone. Basically.
Yeah.
And they were overwhelmed with the demand for these kits.
Wow.
And they needed somebody basically to
come and
just coordinate that, do the shipping, do the customs, answer the emails, and coordinate the delivery of these kind of Bluetooth kits.
Wow.
And I never looked back. I literally got into that building, and there was something very exciting about the sort of entrepreneurial environment.
Well, also in tech, I mean, like you say, the tech is just really kicking off. So it's a really interesting space in itself.
Demand was high. There was loads of money.
Okay.
So anyway, if we go back, I'll give you like a little roundup.
So how long were you there for then?
I was there for 7 years.
Oh, okay.
And so basically, I started as a sales coordinator, really got my hands dirty, and I was so interested in process. So if somebody was like, had sort of recurring shipping problems, I wouldn't just be answering the problem. I would always take a higher view and be like, what is causing this?
Yeah.
And so that was a natural tendency for me to try to understand end to end,
and
problem solve, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I got promoted once a year for 5 years.
Wow.
And just changed what I did as the business grew.
Wow.
And so I got to travel all around Asia with that job, and I was like setting up these, at one point I was like the sort of APAC coordinator, because I had a real knack of dealing with people in different cultures. And so I worked with Koreans, Taiwanese, Chinese and Japanese.
For people that don't know, APAC is
Asia Pacific.
Sorry, I've only because I've had that feedback before. Because obviously, if I know, I don't ever ask the question. People are like, what does that mean? I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, Asia Pacific is called APAC.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just got to work with really interesting people. I got to learn loads of different sort of sales skills, operational skills, and I also got to travel because I arranged the conferences. So all of the people that bought these kits, we called them our delegates, and I would create these, and we had like endless budget.
Sort of like expo type thing.
Yes, yeah. And it would be like, right, we're all going to go spend 5 days in this amazing...
expos were amazing.
Yeah. Sort of these 5-star hotels in Thailand.
Yeah.
And I would coordinate it all and have to do like, what's everybody going to eat? Where's everyone going to stay? And then I would just sit at the back and keep my mouth shut. My job title at the end was business analyst.
Ooh.
And I was kind of working on a separate project to bring in, I don't know if you know this, there's a system called Oracle which is like a business
Yes,
system. And
yeah.
so the business wanted to bring in Oracle for forecasting and sales
Yes,
order processing.
yeah.
And so I worked on a project team.
To research and integrate that, basically.
Yeah, to integrate that.
Yeah.
And I just thought, and so then there was also like some relationship stuff happening behind the scenes. I'd been in a really long relationship, and it was, you know, through uni, through all of this time. And then that came to an end, and I just thought, I need to get out of Cambridge.
Yeah.
I didn't ever want to come back. So it was like this sort of 7-year amazing thing that happened after uni, but it was never in my plan to be located there.
Yeah.
And I didn't, and I was, you know, it was in burnout, but I didn't, you know, I got signed off with work stress. We didn't call it burnout in those days, and I don't know why, at no point did anyone go, why don't you go to therapy and try and work out why this has happened?
Yeah. Well, it's
unthinkable for me.
Yeah.
It was just a bit like, well, just watch some TV and go to bed.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
And I had a really great friend in Brighton at the time who's very sort of spiritual, and we had this, you know, I was backwards and forwards from Cambridge to Brighton most weekends, just, you know, seeing her and having a great time.
I was going to say, yeah.
I think that's a kind of running theme. But
Brighton is a great place to have a great time.
It certainly is. It's easy to do that. But yeah, she sort of introduced me to kind of spirituality and thinking about things in a different way. And I think I just had this epiphany one weekend of like, right, I'm leaving. And then I had some friends that lived in Brixton, and they were like, just come and live in our spare room.
Brilliant.
You know, you can get yourself started in London. And I knew no one apart from them, and they just sort of extended a kind of an offer to me that was like, well, you know, this is a great offer. I don't know what else I want to do, but I know I don't want to be here, so I'm just going to go. Brilliant. And so then I moved to Brixton, and they had a friend who was a recruitment agent. And when I was ready, I was like, look, I want to find a job. And this guy was like, you know, there's this job going at Getty Images. And I applied, got it, and 18 years later.
Wow.
So that's...
So what was that job though?
So I applied for a Asia Pacific sales coordinator.
Yeah.
So
bang
I had
on.
all of the...
Yeah. You were a dream then.
Yeah, it was like a no-brainer. And so I did that for about a year. But again, I very quickly, same kind of thing, got my hands dirty, didn't just think about the confines of my role.
Yeah.
I started going, well, why is this happening like that? And has anybody spoken to the finance team? And this seems to be a huge problem with the product. So should I speak to the product team? And so I just started picking up the phone and speaking to the different departments outside of the department that I was in, and very quickly kind of got a name for myself as being very operationally minded.
Yeah.
And so when a job came up in the operations team...
Oh, so there was an operations team. Yeah, okay.
There was a sales operations team at the time.
Of course, yeah.
So I just jumped into that, and I was there for 10 years, and then the business changed and created a customer service operations team.
Right.
Which I moved into, and I've been there for 4 years now.
Wow. And you will have seen from Getty, just that world has changed. So you've been there 18 years.
Yeah. I mean, they've bought loads of businesses.
Yes.
We've gone from...
But I think how they operate, who they, from literally who they buy from to now, you know what I mean? How it
it's totally changed. Like the world has changed. And, my first job...
Media is just so fundamentally
Yeah, and I used to send
shifted.
out CDs and hard drives of images. And then now, and it's kind of become... obviously digital stuff. API has also developed, so it means that you can connect sites together using technology. It has totally changed. For anyone who really likes to know how things work.
Yeah, which you do, which is what you've described.
Yeah, exactly. And an operations role is really different in different businesses. So if anyone was interested in going into operations, it means different things to different businesses. And so I have worked in a sales operations role, which is essentially mapping processes, making sure that the sales teams have got the right tools, the right resources, the right FAQs. They know a sales team knows how to do their job, and they understand the product well enough and they're trained well enough to serve the customers.
Yeah.
And then I've moved over to customer service. And so that is really different because a salesperson is working with customers, building relationships and selling products into the customer. Customer service is more a one-to-many approach. Yeah. It's been really, really interesting, and I've learnt such a lot through all of my jobs really, but more recently with customer service.
Yeah. Are you fully remote then?
I'm fully remote, yeah.
But you could go in.
I do go. I mean, my office is in Liverpool Street. I can go in whenever I want. But I don't need to because my job is global and my boss is in the US. And I've got a couple of team members that are in Europe, but everyone else is in America and New York. And so it doesn't...
So you're just going to go and sit there then?
Yeah, really? It doesn't matter. The reason I go in is for when there are events and I go in to socialise.
Yeah.
I go in and I make sure that I'm not doing... it's still work, but it's different kind of work.
It's the connection
it's connecting
part,
and building relationships.
Yeah, which is really important.
And I go and chit-chat and fly around people's desks and have conversations about what's happening in their part of the business. But it's not... I don't answer a single email. I don't do any meetings or Zoom.
You use it quite strategically then?
Yeah, and then when I'm at home, I'm on Zoom and having loads of phone calls and...
Okay, so I guess what's next then?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Job, career at Getty, because obviously seemingly not going to leave Getty, really happy.
Well, I don't know, every single year I ask myself the same question, like, am I coasting?
Yeah.
Am I still learning? I mean, am I still learning? Am I still enjoying myself? Do I still have the right level of work and life integration? That's my new phrase, rather than balance, because I think there is no such thing as the balance is something you have to strive for all the time. I've done loads of work in the last few years, which you can probably hear in the way I describe things, but I've had lots and lots of therapy. I've had lots of coaching, and so I'm really aware of my...
So almost you're treating yourself like a project, aren't you? You're
exactly.
learning about yourself now.
Yeah. And so that's and I've been really quite clear to the leadership team that don't think that I'm on this kind of climbing a ladder. My growth is going to be expansive and I'm happy where I am.
Yeah.
So I want opportunities where I can grow and learn. I'm not like, I need a title, I need more money. And so
You're more thinking out and laterally rather than...
Yeah. And so I think, my boss said to me when I told him that, no one's ever said that to me before. Like, don't try to promote me. I don't want your job, and I certainly don't want your boss's job.
Yeah.
I have the tendency to overwork. And I say that phrase, and it's really, I pick those words really carefully, because if unchecked, I would sit at my laptop, I would not go to the loo, I would not drink water, I would not eat, and I would stay on my laptop for hours and hours and hours, and that's because that's how my brain works. And so now I know that about myself. All of my focus is around leveling off that tendency. I always have that tendency, and if I'm not careful, I'm up there, and I have to remind myself to do those things that bring me back into more of being a centered person. But that's kind of why it's important to do the work on yourself. So
cool. In which case, I will ask you my 3 final questions.
Okay.
Which are, so question number 1 is always, this could be quite interesting for you, is some advice that you would give your younger self. It could be any version of your younger self.
Yeah. I think that I would just go back and reassure that girl that it's all going to be fine.
Would you? Yeah.
Yeah.
They felt a little bit different, a little bit from everybody else.
Yeah, and I've done, I've done lots of work to look back.
Have you spoken to your inner child?
Yeah.
Do you know what?
I've been hanging out with her.
Never done that. Have you?
Yeah.
So I've got some really close friends that do that quite a bit and find it really helpful.
It's super helpful.
And I'm like, I do not want to go and talk to my...
I learned a lot about what I must have been really feeling at that time.
Could you actually, sorry, I won't necessarily include them, but what would... Because I've got one friend that almost says she can physically see her younger self, and she has these, and I'm like there going, really? What? How?
Yeah, I can't see. Like, I'm not very good at
Do you do it in a
visualising.
meditative state then?
Yeah, you need to be put into a certain state, and obviously with like a professional, in a professional capacity.
Okay, then question 2 is, what advice, or some advice that your older self would give you now? So like 75-year-old Carline, what do you think she would say?
I think 75-year-old Carline, and I hope that she's still around and still vibrant, would say to me, exercise your bloody body.
Someone said this
and
to me
look
the other
after
day.
your feet.
Yeah,
I think those
look
would
after
be
yourself, basically.
Yeah.
Then question 3 is always, which I feel like you're going to have at least 10 of, but we'll pick 1 or 2. Mantras, life advice, things you live and die by, sayings.
I think I've peppered this conversation with them.
You
because
have.
They're always like, I've got a very busy brain and my mind is always full of stuff, and I've trained it now to be positive stuff and be really mindful of like what is going on inside my head. But good enough is one of my favourites. Because it's, perfection is the enemy of the good, people say. And so I have had perfectionist tendencies, not so much anymore, because I'm very much like good enough is good enough.
Yeah.
Same as at work, for example, like a good day for me is giving 80%. Because actually my 80% is many other people's 120. My boss says that to me all the time. Your 80% is over delivering because of the way I'm built, made. So good enough is good enough.
Cool. Thank you very, very much, Carline.
Oh, I could carry on talking for hours, as you can probably tell. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Oh. If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some pics and read about how to get started in this industry and/or this role, then please go to our website www.twerk.org. The link is in this podcast page and across our socials. Sincere thanks.